The night of Kristallnacht was a wake-up call to all Jews. Germany was no longer safe. The Nazis arrested over 30,000 people and killed 91 Jews. The two-day rampage destroyed 7,000 Jewish homes, businesses, and hundreds of synagogues. After this, it was clear Germany would only get worse for the Jewish people, and tens of thousands of Jews were looking for a way to flee. But it seemed the world was making it difficult for these people to find refuge because of their immigration quotas. Countries like the United States had claimed that they had reached their quotas for Eastern Europeans, which made it insurmountable to grant refuge to the Jews trying to escape from Hitler's terror. Palestine, now known as Israel, was at the time under British rule, and even they shut its doors to the Jewish people. Finding visas in Germany was not only hard, but costly, which was hard for German Jews, as they were run out of their jobs because of how high the anti-Semitism was. So the SS St. Louis was a last hope for these people. The SS St. Louis was part of the Hamburg American Line. Its next voyage was to take 937 Jews, refugees, from Germany to Cuba. The ship's captain was Gustav Schroeder. He was kind to the Jewish people, as he insisted his Jewish passengers be treated with respect and allowed them to practice their religion on board his ship. In his diary, it wrote,
having left their homes, others take it heavily. But beautiful weather, pure sea air, good food, and attentive service will soon provide the usual worry-free atmosphere of long sea voyages. Painful impressions on land disappear quickly at sea and soon seem merely like dreams.
Life on the boat was quite happy as spirits were up for the Jewish people. The SS St. Louis was quite something, as there was a dance band in the evening and a cinema. They had a pool, and the Jews felt as if they no longer had to look over their shoulder. As they landed in Havana, it was soon clear to the Jewish people the feeling of optimism would soon be replaced with the feeling of fear. Hundreds of the passengers were lined up, suitcases in hand, ready to go on to steady land. But the Cuban officials refused the SS St. Louis to dock. For the next 7 days, Captain Schroeder, along with the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, tried to convince the Cuban officials to allow the Jews refuge in their country. Only a handful of people were allowed to enter Cuba, but still, over 900 were left to fear return to Germany, as they were forced to leave. Life on the boat was depressing. One passenger slit his wrist in an attempt to kill himself, then returned to Germany. The captain, desperate to find refuge for his passengers, stopped close to Florida's coast in hope that the U.S. would allow the Jews in. Schroeder asked Roosevelt to allow refuge for these people, but the United States denied their reasoning, being they would have to wait their turn for entry into the country as their quota was filled. The waiting process for entry into the United States would take years. Canadian government also refused the refugees. Canada's Director of Government of Canada's Immigration Branch of the Department of Mines and Resources, Frederick Blair, wrote in a confidential letter why Jews were so unpopular in allowing them refuge.
All over the world seems very unpopular, and yet, as you remark, there are some very fine people amongst them. I often think that instead of persecution, it would be far better if we more often told them frankly why many of them are unpopular. If they would divest themselves of certain of their habits, I'm sure they would be just as popular in Canada as our Scandinavians.
With loss of hope, the SS St. Louis headed back to Germany. But Schroeder once again tried to find refuge for the Jews aboard his ship. With help of the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, they were able to negotiate temporary sanctuary for the passengers on board the ship in Belgium, France, Great Britain, and the Netherlands. As this seemed like a happy ending for the Jews, some who believed to be safe from the Nazi Party found themselves in the same situation they were running from. 254 men, women, elderly, and children were killed on sight or killed in concentration camps as the Nazi Party swept across Western Europe.